love wearing this uniform. I had this uniform on this morning when I was in CVS, and then the pharmacist says, "Do you need your prescription expedited?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to London." So she had it for me in 5 minutes.
We wanted to know how professionals have changed over time. So we got different experts from multiple decades to share their experiences.
We're looking at a 747. It was the most exciting plane, my favorite plane. It was like a floating hotel. I remember, here I am, 21 years old, and I looked at the plane and I went on it, and of course we have first class, and then we had business class, and then we had 3 sections of coach. I thought I was done, and I opened the curtains and there's a whole nother section back there. I was like, oh my God, this is never gonna end.
I mean, there were people who said, does this thing really get off the ground?
It may interest you to know that the complete flight of the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk could have taken place inside a Boeing 747.
The enormity, the size of this aircraft, it was like flying a building. The 747, the Queen of the Skies, was without question our favorite airplane of anything that ever flew. But it's pretty much the world's favorite aircraft.
My favorite airplane is a 747. I'm sure it's probably most of the flight attendants that flew. It's one of our favorites.
You know, seeing that Pan Am blue ball, which they called the meatball, the logo at the time was called the meatball, all around the world, this meant home. We were the unofficial flag carrier for the United States. When you saw that, it was something special. Is this a DC-10?
You seem less impressed with the DC-10.
The DC-10 were aircrafts that we acquired through the acquisition or merger with National Airlines. The passenger level is here where you'll see the windows and the livery line there. But underneath, there is a lower lobe galley. So there was an elevator that would take you down to the lower lobe galley. I tried never to work down there, mind you, because I didn't want to get stuck down there. The elevators would break frequently, and since all your meals are loaded downstairs, we had to find ways to get the meals to the upper deck where the passengers were. There was a floor compartment that you could lift up, and it had access to the galley below. So we used to, if you were down in the galley, we would come over and start handing the trays up through this hole in the floor that we opened up.
So like a trap door?
So it was like a trap door. We were hand carrying trays all through an airplane that, was holding 300 people. Wasn't the best presentation, but it got the job done.
Right, we're looking at the United Airlines 767. And it's actually one of the oldest planes in the fleets today that's still 30-something years old. And that we still have 767s in present day that I fly on at United. I loved it because the passengers felt like they had more space.
Did you like the DC-10?
It was kind of sometimes daunting when you're a new flight attendant, you're working down below, and you're down there by yourself. It's kind of eerie, and you're hearing, you hear the engine noises, and back then we had the kennel next to it, so sometimes you'd hear barking, animals, and so it's kind of a very interesting experience.
Continental, we flew DC-10s. I flew those to Rio de Janeiro for many years. That was one of my favorite birds. This is the 787. This is the Dreamliner. This has great ventilation, like you breathe better.
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, well, we're not talking about a 2-hour flight. We're talking about a 14-hour flight to Asia. Breathing makes a difference. The air quality definitely, and this aircraft has the better system.
When I started flying, they didn't have a liquor cart. We actually had to make them. I sound really... In the 70s, when I was on a 727 and a 707, we would unfold a cart, set up a cart, a 3-tiered cart. It was a lot of work. And we had to have the first cocktail out in 12 minutes. That was the rule. Service was service, and we were #1 in service, American Airlines. We were. The plane could be still going up like that, and we'd be out of our jump seats setting up the 3-tiered cart. That's why I have strong legs now. No veins, because of just going up and down and all the exercise I got. And the service was never ending. From being on the ground, we served champagne. It looks like she's serving champagne. She could be on the ground because people are standing up. And people were allowed to stand up. People were allowed to roam around. There was none of this. Now everybody has to stay in their seat with the seatbelts on. That's why I think people are so cranky now. And then we had the upstairs, up the 747, we had a spiral staircase going up. After you finished your meal, you went up there to see and be seen. All the first class, the movie stars would go up there and hang out. Nobody was working on a computer up there.
So this is essentially like a lounge.
Yes, it was a lounge. And we had a piano in the back, and people would play the piano during, after the meal service. People who knew how to play the piano.
So it wasn't a staff piano player. It'd be anybody who can play can just go up there.
Yeah, but we also had famous people go in the back and play the piano.
Do you ever hear anybody famous play the piano?
No.
Yep, that was my error. It was a exclusive club in the sky, especially for those traveling in first and business class. And the helicopter service was amazing. It left from the 34th Street Seaport, and you could really be from Manhattan to JFK and go right into the Clipper Club in about 10, 15 minutes and check in for your flight. On this side, you're looking at the pre-plated entrees that are on China that would have been served in a first-class cabin on Pan Am. You'll see that there is a flight attendant offering items off a cart. And you can also see on here there's a bud vase, because we always had fresh flowers. They each got a flower on their table setup. You can see this tureen on the top, and that has all the accoutrements that would be served with the caviar. It was only the finest Russian beluga caviar, nothing else. It was flown in fresh from Moscow daily. I see a pate, which is also very popular in the 80s. Everybody had pate, and again, a lot of that pate was sent in from France. It was fresh pate. And then you bring out the entrees. We cooked a fresh Chateaubriand. We had cooking ovens. They don't have cooking ovens on airplanes anymore. They have reheating ovens. When the roast beef or the Chateaubriand was boarded, it was raw, but there was always a roast. Then we'd go to the seat and we would carve a slice off.
In the 90s, we had lovely choices, and we would start off also with the appetizer, your mixed nuts, the warm nuts, and then you'd go into your appetizer, then your salad, and your entree. Breakfast here, lovely omelet with juice, coffee. We had the silver pots, the silver service in first class. We didn't serve the tenderloin to order at the time. We didn't cut in the aisle like we did with Pan Am. I would say it was more of a streamlined than it was with Pan Am.
Now, what was a first class seat like?
Oh,
back
big, very big. But we have better first class seats now. They lay flat. You get pillows and blankets. Well, of course, you had pillows and blankets then too, but I don't know. I think the seats have come a long way. But these seats look very comfortable, and they were very comfortable.
We're looking at sleeperette seats, they were called. They were comfortable, and you could get some sleep.
These were the business class seats. I look back at these and I think, oh my gosh, they don't even look that wide, or they don't look that spacious as opposed to, business class seats today. And, the lovely design, the stripe. What are your controls? You've got to go lean back and to go forward. Definitely maybe better than some of the other airlines of the 80s that had, but not anything compared to, the bigger seats that we have today in business class. But back then it was comfortable and people loved them.
At Polaris, these are your individual beds here. We have mattress pads. So we'd put one down and then put down a sheet on top of the mattress pad, like a fitted type sheet, and then a flat sheet for you to pull over, and then on top of that, a duvet. It's a Saks Fifth Avenue duvet, so it's nice, good quality. It's great because you just fly 16 hours, you land in Asia, and you're ready to go. But we did have a big problem with this. Now I'm looking at them, and if something fell into the seat, forget about it. Like, you really had to be MacGyver to get it out.
Those seats look pretty comfortable. This looks like a typical coach cabin from the 70s where people are happy, they're excited, they're happy to be traveling, they're smiling.
3 across, yes, that's 3 across, so that's probably going to be a coach flight. Well, they were bigger then. You had more space. You don't have much room to push your seat back today.
Oh my gosh, Coach. The seats, they weren't as close together. They had a little bit more space. So passengers weren't on top of each other. I think it was just, even the aisles were a little bit wider. I think when they started taking rows out, it just became more, uncomfortable for some of the passengers. They just put in more passenger seats, and some of the planes, they took up more galley area. In the 90s, we still had, pillows and blankets. We served meals in the 90s back there. Every flight had over 2 hours had a meal. And the ubiquitous peanuts, we always we were able to serve those without too much of a controversy. And we usually had a little bit more extra flight attendants on board. So I think economy back then was a comfortable experience.
It turned into a bus. It's a commute.
And there's the big screen that everybody gets to watch the same movie. Everybody watched the same movie. People were thrilled to be able to watch a movie, but they had to pay for the movie. We had to sell the headsets. I'm trying to remember how much they were. I think they were $5 or maybe $3 when I started. We had the headsets that we had to plug in the little earpieces to. And then at the end, we had to count them all up and put them in a bag and then lock them. It was a lot of paperwork.
It didn't matter. It was a terrible movie. They wanted something just to pass the time, I think. We couldn't get satellite television. We couldn't get any of that.
This is the projector and the Super 8 movie cartridge.
It was big and clunky. And when it worked fine, it was great. When the system didn't work, then you heard about it.
Most of the aircrafts now have TVs in the headrests.
Would it ever cause you guys headaches?
We have a reset system where we can go and troubleshoot the actual seat. Sometimes it was the whole row, so if this guy is already halfway through a movie and this guy's movie goes out, then we have to reset the whole thing, so he's not a happy camper. Oh, free drink is not a problem. Are you kidding me? That's easy. People these days, they want a mortgage payment.
And I'm grateful for today's technology. I miss some of the things that we had in the past. I think that, I miss the fact that you communicated more back then. It's because you've got your headphones in, you've got your screens in front of you, you're kind of in your own little world. And I always like working up front because I feel like, when you're doing a service, you get more of an opportunity to, speak to the passengers.
I never had any complaints, except about smoking.
All right, smoking on airplanes.
Yes, that was a thing.
Oh, there were cigars, there were pipes. The smoke was so intense on the plane that my eye makeup would be dripping down my face. I couldn't breathe, and I remember calling the union and getting the union president on the phone and telling her I can't breathe. And she goes, well, you're going to have to medically disqualify yourself from flying then. That was the union response. And people would fall asleep with cigarettes in their hands. They could start a fire. That was the real danger, starting a fire on the airplane.
Excuse me. Perhaps you didn't realize, but this is a no-smoking zone, and I'll have to ask you to put the cigarette out.
Oh, I'll just be a minute, actually. I mean, I realize it's no smoking, but it'll just be a minute.
There were always people who would book a seat in a non-smoking section and then want to smoke. Because ironically, a lot of the smokers didn't want to be in the smoking section, but they wanted to smoke. And of course, the people seated around them were not terribly happy if somebody would light up a cigarette.
We used to go in there and clean them and make sure that they were fresh. Now, we got a lot more people traveling that are not familiar with flying. They don't know how to use the bathrooms. They don't know how to open the door. They may take the paper and put it in the wrong receptacle, or they don't know how to flush.
We cleaned the bathrooms. We were actually responsible. I know nobody will touch them today, but we had to use them too. So we would go in, kind of clean it down, just because there was a sense of pride. It depended on how really bad it was. I mean, there were some times we would just say, that one is locked off.
Oh, geez. The blue room. I think I remember the first time that we called it the blue room because when it was blue coming out of the toilet, we'd say, oh, you got to go take care of the blue room. Or anybody in the blue room? And obviously there were extracurricular activities that went on in there at times that they were known for back in the day, the Mile High Club that they had called it back in the, 70s, 80s, whatever it was.
Is that for real?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. People, for some particular reason, they just thought that was the cool thing to do. And so they would just disappear in there, and one would go in first, and sometimes another would go in after that, knock on the door.
Would you scold them?
Yes. Say, excuse me, this is meant for all the passengers and not, There'd be flight attendants who would line up and they'd clap or something crazy, or they'd just stare at them. And, most of the time it was a reaction of, this is not cool. You don't do this on an airplane. And why would you want to? It's a small bathroom. It's not sometimes the cleanest place to be. But like anything else, people want to do something to say they did it. It was just different times, crazy times.
These bathrooms, as the years have gone, I don't know if it's me getting bigger or the bathrooms getting smaller. I don't know. But these bathrooms are so tiny. And I've seen some disasters happening in these bathrooms. Oh, glad I don't have to use these bathrooms anymore.
We met movie stars so many times, but you had to act calm. You couldn't act all excited and weird. This is just a little notebook. I would write down on the menus who was on my plane that day. I had Liza Minnelli, I had Liz Taylor, Nicolas Cage, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, O.J. Simpson, Farrah Fawcett, Sarah Jessica Parker, Robert Redford, Donald Trump, Alan Alda, Al Pacino 3 times. I loved Al Pacino. This is Richard Nixon. I was not a big fan of Richard Nixon. I was in coach on a DC-10 in the Caribbean, and Richard Nixon was in coach then because he had already left office, and he was sitting with Pat, and he was on my side, so I had to take care of him. So I went over to him and asked him if he needed anything, and he grabbed my hand and he said, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And I burst into tears because my mother had just tragically died that week, and she was only 55 years old. She died very suddenly. So I'm crying and I'm trying to compose myself, and I said that my mother had just died. He held my hand for 45 minutes. In 34 years, he was the nicest passenger I've ever had on board.
I was living in Manhattan at the time and was leaving for a flight. And I came down from my apartment. I had my uniform on and my wheels with me. And on the corner of my building, there was a stretch limousine parked and the windows were up. But I noticed on top of the limousine was a pair of sunglasses. So I tapped on the rear passenger window, and the window came down, and there was Rod Stewart staring at me. And he just, I handed him his glasses, said, "I think you forgot something." He said, "Thank you very much." The window rolled up, and he went on his merry way. I went off to the airport. I was operating a flight to London that night. And here comes, walking down the jetway, none other than Rod Stewart. And he kind of looks at me, kind of trying to place where he might have known me or why does he recognize me. But as he got closer, all of a sudden he looked at me and I looked at him and I was kind of laughing. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you could have at least offered me a ride."
I remember a great flight with Mick Jagger, and he couldn't sleep, so I was just making drinks. He's like, "Hey, you want me to make some drinks with you?" And I'm like, "Who gets, how often do you get to make a drink with Mick Jagger?" So he was so cool and so nice, and so he was just up there shaking it up. And that was back in the day when we made cocktails, and just shaking it up and poured a couple drinks. And I served it to passengers, and I said, "You're never going to believe who just made this drink."
I was working in first class, so I'm wearing the bow tie and the white serving garment. This guy comes on board and he goes, "Hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so." And I said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Carlos." And he's like, "Cool, Carlos, hey, do me a favor, lose the bow tie, lose the jacket. I have all of first class booked." He's like, "You know who Marilyn Manson is?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, the whole band is up here, and so, we'd like to have a relaxed flight." And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." And they just started coming on one by one. Twiggy Ramirez, Madonna Wayne Gacy, Marilyn Manson, and flying from Newark to Lisbon, Portugal, shaking martinis in the middle of an aisle. It was great. It was fun. So when we land in Portugal, and while we're there checking in, like the whole band comes in, and Twiggy's like, "Dude, you're here." And I'm like, "Yeah." This is Madonna Wayne Gacy and Twiggy Ramirez and myself. And we went out for dinner. This guy wanted to drink absinthe. And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, whatever, I'll drink absinthe with you." Mind you, I had to work the next day, but yeah, we had a fun time. If you see here, he's holding up a set of wings. I gave him my wings that night for him, extending the invitation to me and taking me out that night.
I was in charge on an all-nighter coming home, and I sat next to Robert Klein and Jay Leno. And I kept giving them drinks, and they would sit with me, and they were telling me jokes the whole way. And Jay Leno, he asked me out. There was a lot of, people asking people out. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of sexualization going on. Other airlines like Braniff, they had the short shorts. I don't know how you could work in those though. I was the shortest one, and I had to stand on top of the seat to get into the overhead bin. So. I don't think that would be a good idea to have short shorts on.
National had a campaign that was "Fly Me." I'm Linda, fly me. We didn't do things like that. That wasn't Pan Am's brand. It wasn't what we advertised. It wasn't what we were trying to sell. We were selling sophistication. We were selling business. We were selling cross-cultural appeal.
Did you have like men hitting on you?
I was so innocent. I really was. Even though I grew up in Brooklyn, I was pretty innocent. It didn't happen to me. And I never had that with the pilots either. They never hit on the flight attendants because they were so old. They got their flying hours from World War II. You know, they were like your grandfather.
Did you ever get hit on by passengers?
Sure, of course. You know, they would flirt with you, and I was very observant at the time whether they'd have a wedding ring on or not before I was married. And all of a sudden you'd see the wedding ring slip off and you'd go, okay. And they would start, you know, talking to you and like hitting on you. And I'm like, okay, well, does that wife that has that ring, you know, with that ring in your pocket, is that, you know, something that you'd like her to know about? So I called some people out on it before.
How about pilots?
I think that, you know, there are different times in my career when, you know, you're kind of naive, and maybe some pilots would try to take advantage of that, you know, and you offer you, you know, come watch TV in my room, but they didn't really want to watch TV. And so you obviously realize, you know, what they have in mind, and you get out of there really quick. And
There were very strict physical requirements for flight attendants back in the 70s, extremely hard. You had to have makeup on at all times, you had to have lipstick on, you had to have nail polish. The most you could weigh was 119, but if you got to that weight, they would torture you and put you on weight check. And I had that experience a few times, and it wasn't very pretty. If you did not lose a pound and a half a week, you could be suspended with no pay. You could lose your job. And it was very scary for flight attendants that had children. When they were allowed to have children, they had to weigh the same as what they did when they first got hired. And they just had a baby. And they couldn't go back to work to pay the bills until they weighed what they were supposed to weigh. So it was really difficult.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I wanted that job. We all wanted that job. And we did whatever it took to keep that job. And we put up with a lot because we wanted to be flight attendants. And it was the best career.
in the 90s, we just kind of didn't have to have that, approach to things as much as we did back in the day. We were still weighed, at times. And we still had a grooming supervisor. So I think that there were good things.
When did men become flight attendants?
I think that there weren't really as many. There were stewards in the beginning when they started. And then I think more in the 2000s, I think it started to become, that more men became flight attendants. And it was wonderful because so many great guys are flight attendants, and it's as it should be. And there were a lot of things on an airplane that's nice to have, a man around. And I think that there was no reason not to.
San Francisco, definitely, was my favorite.
I had many. I always loved flying to Rome. If I could get to Rome all the time, I would.
Oh my goodness. I think, Italy, the food and the wine. I mean, I just, you can't get better than that.
There's so many, man. There's so many. I mean, Hawaii, it's great. It's a crummy room. The hotel is like ancient. The room is crummy, but you're in Waikiki Beach. It's like,
It depends. If we were in Arkansas, we might go out with the cockpit. We really didn't hang around with them, but if we were in an unusual or weird place and there were some safety concerns, not because we were young girls alone, we would meet the cockpit and go out with them. But most of the times we went out with the girls, and we didn't have a lot of money. And we were always on diets because we couldn't eat anything.
Just go out and party?
Sure. It wasn't always, but usually we tried to stay together. And there were restaurants that were particularly known for Pan Am Cruise. In Frankfurt, there was a place that we nicknamed, it wasn't the real name, but it was nicknamed the gas station. I mean, literally, I think Pan Am Cruise kept the restaurant going for decades.
Absolutely. It was wonderful. That's the great thing about the camaraderie. And, when I started with National, we were just, we were kids, 20 years old, 19, 20 years old when I started. And we would be on reserve, and we'd all have our beepers. We'd by the pool, and we'd be hanging out, and we'd go on layovers. And at the time then, we would the whole crew would go out. Same with Pan Am. It's just, we had such great times. I mean, we went all over the cities together.
boom, I land in Milan. I want to go out. I want to see Milan. I'm here for 24 hours, I want to go have dinner. I want to go see what's, I'm a young guy. I'm single. I want to see what's happening, But once you get that out of your system, then you already know what to do and how long to sleep. That was really important.
It's more individualized now, I would say. I mean, I still go out with the crews, but it's a lot of, people do kind of their own thing. Things are very different.
I loved being a flight attendant. I still have dreams about being a flight attendant. I work on an airplane at least once or twice a week in my dreams. And it's so funny because I am not alone. Mechanics have these dreams. Cargo people have these dreams. Ticket agents have these dreams. We call them flight mares because they're kind of, you can't get through security. You can't find your ID. You can't find your suitcase. You can't find your gate. That's what these dreams are all about. Maybe it's post-traumatic stress disorder, I don't know.
I adored it. The whole saying is it's an addictive lifestyle. You might complain about things, but you wouldn't do anything else. You know, when you're flying internationally, like the world's your mall, you know, I could shop all over the world. I was stationed in Singapore for a while and Bangkok for a while, and I would fly into China. I'd fly into Shanghai to get silk, and then bring it back to tailors in Singapore, and they would make beautiful clothing for us. I love flying to Argentina. You know, we'd go and we'd get leather suits made on a layover for dirt cheap. Was it Beaujolais time in France? Okay, let's go get the latest case of Beaujolais that just came out.
I still love it. They say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, yeah, you do work a day in your life, but I love it. You know, I've been doing this since I was a kid, 40, and I've been flying 40 some years. And to this day, I still think I have the greatest job in the world. I'm still thrilled when I land someplace and I go out on a layover. I'm like, okay, wow, it's like, okay, as if it's a new place, a new destination, even though I may have been there many times.
Loved it. Loved it. It was most amazing time of my life.
Why do you love it so much?
There's no school that could teach you that. You know, cultures. It's such a good thing. Sorry, choked up. Yeah, there's no schooling. Sorry.
And why are you being so emotional?
I don't know. Not doing it anymore, you know?
I gave out 50-year service pins when I was in management. That's how much this job meant to people. It was an experience. It wasn't just a job. We have amazing memories of times that, you know, are just cherished.